Hey guys, welcome back to the Greenback Voyage podcast. I'm your host, Shravan,
And I'm your host, Joel.
and this week, other than Trump's impeachment that's going on, we do have other news available to you guys. So don't worry, we won't be like, you know, the regular media outlooks out there. And we start off this week with the weekly COVID update. So, President Biden has said that the U.S. has struck multiple deals to purchase, I think, around 200 million more vaccine doses.
Right, he's gonna the purchases are gonna be from Pfizer and Moderna, and the total doses that they've ordered is actually around 600 million.
Jesus, I mean, is it because of like the first shot and the second shot? Is that why they've
Yeah,
ordered so much?
yeah, right. So you have a booster shot and then the actual shot that's 1 or 2 weeks later.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it seems like everything's going on track for the US right now, and especially the UK. Um,
hmm
I think the UK has, like you said, they had their worst economic years since, what was it, like 300 years ago?
Yeah, they're going through a very rough time right now.
Yeah,
So
especially with them leaving the EU as well, and possibly the worst time they could.
yeah.
I
hmm
mean, not only do they have to figure out the COVID situation, but then afterwards they have to figure out everything else involving leaving Brexit and possibly what Scotland and Ireland and Wales might do in
Right,
retaliation to that.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah, well, regarding vaccinations, I mean, now we have enough, or we're going to have enough to vaccinate the whole population. Uh, maybe for it's gonna happen maybe in like the next 2 years. I think everyone's gonna be vaccinated.
yeah. I mean, I'm hoping to get vaccinated later on this spring, maybe around April, May time. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably like look to get vaccinated in in summer. To be honest, I want to wait and see first.
That's true. That's true. I think just depends on our timeline. But just going
Yeah.
off on that, big news this week, I guess, we got to talk about it. Trump's impeachment, the second impeachment that he's going through right now. Interesting that there were Republicans who decided to vote on, just conducting a trial in itself.
hmm
Does that set up precedents for the future in terms
Well,
in terms of like I know Trump. This all gone pretty fast, but the president I'm looking forward is, let's say in the future a president does something, I don't know, something wrong that's in violation of the Constitution, and then
mhm.
let's say 2 years later the other party takes control of the government, and then they impeach him for something that he did 2 years prior. Do you think that's right, or is that what they're trying to set up here?
I think that it's what Trump's defense lawyers are arguing is uh, that having to have a hearing for President Trump or previous former President Trump um, is there's the constitutional implications. That's what they're arguing. They're saying it's unconstitutional to do this. Um, and yeah, so the Democrats are basically saying that Trump, he's the one who incited everything, and they're bringing up evidence of Trump supporters who broke into the Capitol, saying that Trump is the one that gave us the, go ahead to do this. And so I think the defense lawyers just started their defense hearings, and we'll have to see next week how things go.
Hmm.
But it's kind of a constitutional the question of is it right to is it constitutionally right to have this hearing? That's what they're arguing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and while I do agree that Trump does need to be impeached, but that's my own personal opinion, there is like, precedent for the future, like I said, whether it's really possible to do this, and if one party just takes control of the government, how they can just retaliate over the other party like this. It's like
But
it's a
they should have.
line that they should be careful.
they should have gone for invoking the 25th Amendment. To be honest, that would completely bar Trump from holding any federal office and in it for his remaining of his lifetime. And that would require just a simple majority vote. So, I don't understand why they have to go through this, big process. Maybe it's a political play to split up the Republican Party, and that's what you're kind of seeing here. You have, the Trump loyalists, and then you have, the centrist Republicans who are all for like the decorum of the Republican Party, and they absolutely hate Trump, and they just hopped on the Trump bandwagon just to get the votes. So there's a huge split going on in the Republican Party, and I personally think that they should have gone for the 25th Amendment, and that would just, they wouldn't have to go through the impeachment and, all this stuff, and that would just bar Trump from running for federal office again. He won't be able to run in the 2024 election or for anything, for governorship or anything.
Yeah, but
they should have just done that.
They also need a 2/3 vote in Congress for that, and I doubt that they would have gotten it a month back.
For 25th Amendment, it's a simple majority, I believe so.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, then, yeah, maybe it's possible. And especially with the way McConnell is now leaning towards convicting Trump. It's actually very interesting to see.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's trying to... so the whole thing with like Schumer and McConnell is they're trying to split power equally, which I don't understand why Schumer would go for that. And McConnell has completely turned his back on Trump in the past few weeks. And that's the split that's going on in the party right now, in the Republican Party. But with Trump, he's saying he's gonna create the Patriot Party and things like that. If he does, I think the recent poll suggested that 30% of Republicans would leave to go join the Patriot Party, and that's just good news for Democrats, because this is the same thing that happened with Teddy Roosevelt when he split off, and then who was it, like Herbert Hoover that won the election. So it's really, things are really heating up in the Republican Party. We'll have to see in the coming months how things go.
I mean, history does repeat itself, and it's the way it's looking at right now. I wouldn't be surprised in the near future if the Democrats have some sort of issue like this. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, both parties do need to be split up, whether it's through a law or whether it's going to be by themselves and their differing ideals. We shall see.
Probably even for the Democratic Party, if you look at people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, and people of the Progressive Caucus, they have a lot of conflicting interest with, like, the top Democrats like Pelosi and Schumer and those guys, right? And Bernie Sanders, AOC, they usually submit because they don't want to go against the grain of the Democratic Party. They don't want to like challenge Pelosi, and that's what you see with AOC. She says she's progressive, but when it comes to bringing like a floor vote for Medicare for all, she won't do that because she doesn't want to go against Pelosi. Because when the next election comes around, she won't be able to get donations and all funding for campaigns and things like that. So. Yeah. Of course, both parties are just too strong and too powerful, and we need something like a parliament system where more parties come in and more voices are heard. So I think in the future there will be a split between two parties. One will, the centrist Republicans will split off from the very right wing Republicans, and the same thing will happen to the Democratic Party. So the left-wing socialist Democrats will split off from the centrist Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, history does repeat itself. Although with the Democrats, I do believe that since more of the progressive candidates are, let's say, younger than the more central Democrats, they might just be biding their time for now. But who knows how long their patience will last, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we have some news about oil and gas. There's a very booming rally in the oil markets. I think we have a low supply of oil, and it's pushed crude prices to highest levels since the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys remember, but that one time when crude prices went negative, I think all the way down to like negative 30 a barrel.
That was
people
insane.
Yeah, so they were just paying to hold the supply of crude, which that's never happened before, and that was just crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, we have a booming rally in crude prices, and I think you put a ETF in there.
XLE is like XLF was the most recent lagging sector within the S&P to finally, I think, close enough to recovering to pre-pandemic highs. And it looks like XLE is like the next one that it's only right where it was in June, like June 1st, June 2nd, where everything really popped then. So it's only at those levels right now. So it still has a good way to go before it reaches pre-pandemic highs. And I think maybe right now it might be like really good to look at some upstream productions within the oil and gas market. So yeah, that might be something to look out for in the coming month. I know there's already been a rally since the start of February itself within that specific sector, but yeah, we shall see where it goes, especially with like, I think Shell said in the next decade it would cut production and supply within fuels. So
yeah, and they're going to like the EV side, in the charging stations and things like that. So
yes,
I think these guys have, all the big oil companies. They're they have huge cash, strong balance sheets, so they would be able to change their course into the EV side. Acquiring small companies, and they'll have a better chance of getting into the EV side. And they have the connections to the government. So
yeah, I think that oil will rise for like the coming year, but then as more people, or as I guess more laws are passed in relation to the EV markets and carbon net neutrality, zero emissions, that type of stuff, we will start to see like a lagging sector in XLE, and it might start to change. I mean, it's already been on a rapid decline since I think 2010, 2011, when Exxon was the most valued company back then. So now when you look at it, it's only taking up like about 2% probably of the S&P, somewhere like that, 2 to 5% of the S&P 500. So yeah, I mean, they have to start changing their ways, otherwise they are going to be left behind. And especially with Exxon's recent, I think, debacle with the SEC or the DOJ over its assets. Like, it's just showing how, oil may not be the right thing to look at in the future, and that there is another sector that is competing for oil where investors can actually push money into, that they know isn't corrupt and may be stable enough to keep pushing forward in the future.
Yeah, and high growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of EV, Toyota has boosted its profit projections, and after a faster than expected rebound. So they're planning to launch about 3 new electric car models this year in the US.
Yeah, they are. Everyone is starting to move fast in response to Tesla. I think the only issue that I see right now with all these new EV cars and all these, especially like United with buying, I think, what was it, 200 taxis?
It was a startup. They basically invested into a startup called Archer, and that's actually going public via a SPAC. I forgot the name of the SPAC, but they're going public. And United Airlines basically is planning to buy initially 200 flying taxis. So these are kind of like a drone. I think it's maybe a tricopter or a quadcopter, but it's basically a drone, a 2-seater drone that will carry passengers to the airport. And they're planning to invest in that company.
Yeah, that might take a while to actually build up, because drones in itself we're only starting to get used to, and it's only starting to be implemented in like small areas with Domino's and Amazon. So it will probably take a while for them to, I don't know.
Right. It'll probably be mostly used in like city areas, I think. So, yeah, we'll have to see how that kind of future will probably take 5 or 10 years, to be completely adopted.
Yeah, but there are
Um,
issues with all these EVs that are coming out. One is the semiconductor supply with
right.
the decrease, like because, all the car manufacturers basically just cut off the supply with China
Hmm.
at the beginning of the pandemic. Now they realize that they don't have enough to sustain the possible demand that they might see in the future.
Yeah, even
Include,
Toyota is having a shortage, right?
yeah, I mean all EVs, including Tesla themselves. It's actually because they didn't expect the EV market. No one expected the EV market to bounce like it did,
Right.
and because of that, yeah, they're all experiencing shortages. So either what might happen is, the EV market itself might have like a slow growth going on for the next 5 years, or the price of EV cars itself might just shoot up for like the next 3 to 5 years before costs are cut down and we can see a more stable type of sales within the cars.
Mm.
And
Okay.
then along with that, I think there was like, uh, I think you wrote down the U.S. Trade Commission ruling. If you wanted to talk more about that.
Right. So there's basically this battery maker called the SK Innovation, and the U.S. Trade Commission has accused them of stealing trade secrets related to lithium-ion battery production. So SK has said they haven't done this, but the U.S. Trade Commission saying that they're trying to disrupt like Ford and Volkswagen's plans to build electric vehicles in the U.S.
Yeah. So everything that's going on right now, it's I think at some point there will be a small correction within the EV sector as a whole. It's just a
Right.
matter of when, not if. Especially with the amount of EVs that are being put on. I mean, you see Lucid and CCIV. It's just
Hmm.
insane. Like I remember seeing them at 15, and I'm like, wow, these are based off rumors, the price growth that they've had, and now they still haven't announced anything. And now they're at 41 bucks a
Yeah.
share.
If a correction were to happen, like I think the big dogs like Tesla and Toyota won't go. They won't be completely
No,
wiped
no,
out.
they
They'll
won't.
probably lose like
Yeah,
50 or 100 billion in market value. But the thing is with guys like Li Auto, XPEV, Neo, like CCIV, these guys, even like what's the Fisker, and
Leon.
what's the what's the other one, like the ticker symbol Solo. It's
I
like
have no clue.
Electromanica vehicles or something. Yeah, those guys will probably like get wiped
Hmm.
or maybe lose like more than 50% of their market
Yeah,
value, because they have no sales, or most of them have no sales. I mean, Neo does, but when you look at like Solo, the ticker Solo, like Li Auto, XPEV, these guys have little to no sales. They're not profitable. They're not even that hugely profitable. So these guys will come back to their true valuations. It's kind of like the dot-com bubble, right? People just slapped .com to the ticker, and it just went off right after
hmm,
IPO. So the same kind of effect is happening with EV tickers when Tesla and all these EV related news it comes out. Then these guys just shoot up 10-15%. So the market is so euphoric right now, and people on Wall Street bets and those guys, they're buying up and pumping stocks, and so we'll see how it goes.
yeah.
When
Especially, I think
when will the
with the cannabis
Mhm.
stocks right now is another one that's starting to rise again.
Yeah, I mean Tilray hit more than $50. That was surprising.
It hit
Um,
70 at some point. It went from I think 35
Pre-market, right?
pre-market to like
Hmm.
$70 like 30 minutes
Wow.
before close.
Yeah.
And that was based
Uh,
off like Canada news, Canada or UK, one of those two. Uh,
Even a penny stock Sundell growers that went from like 50 cents all the way to $3,
mhm.
maybe like $2.50. So, and that's getting a lot of inflow because it's a very small, cheap stock. It's, under $3. So, Wall Street Bets it's now targeting cannabis stocks. Just a bet on Biden decriminalizing, or the federal government decriminalizing nationwide of marijuana use. So.
Yeah, who knew a Reddit subreddit would create such a frenzy within the investing world? I don't think anyone else would have thought of this. I mean, now the DOJ and I think San Francisco's U.S. attorney are now like figuring out what's going on between brokers, social media companies,
Right.
hedge funds, and like what's really going. I think Citadel and Robin are to speak in front of the Senate Senate hearing soon enough.
And not
So
even them. You know the guy Deep Effing Value on Reddit, who was the first guy to post like I'm gonna buy GameStop, and he gave his all reason. And every week he was posting like a YOLO update, and he posted a screenshot of his position. So he's also going to be called for that hearing as well. That's what they're hinting at.
I don't think. I mean, there's no legal. They can't have legal action against him, can they?
Depends on so right now they're just gonna call him for a hearing. That they can do.
Yeah.
But in terms of legal action, if they find something that he did malicious, then yes, they can have legal action against him.
But right now everything's public, so it's not like he went behind some. He went like in the black market and
Right,
did
but what if
something
like
there.
what? So hypothetically speaking, like what if he sold out of his position at the highs and continued to say, hold the line and things like that?
Yeah.
Then that would be like a manipulation of small traders on the Wall Street bets,
is true.
and that's actually what I think mostly happened. Like bigger traders ended up shorting the stock and saying hold the line, knowing that the stock's going to tank down, and a lot of small retailers, got screwed over at the end.
Yeah, I mean it ended in tears. So
Yeah, it's trading at like $50 right now.
yeah, I still remember last year. I actually want to hear Michael Burry's update on his GameStop shares and see.
Probably sold out.
He probably did, but I don't know when he would have, because last March when he bought them at around like $3, $4. I think later that August when the shares were at like $12, he was saying like, this is actually insane. I don't think they should be this high. And he was kind of concerned about it being at $12 itself. So I don't know if he would have sold his shares then, or if he sold his shares in
Right.
a couple weeks ago. Like, I'd like to know an update on that, but I don't think he'd be willing to
So
share.
some of the momentum hedge funds, like the quant based hedge funds, those guys who got into the GameStop frenzy, they made millions. Like one hedge fund in particular made 700 million, and they released that they sold out in the $400 range. And I'm expecting that most of the hedge funds, they're all like a close knit circle with connections, so they all probably sold out in the 400 range. And Michael Blurry, he probably did sell in that range, I'm guessing, but he hasn't. I don't think he has said anything about his position, right, in public release.
I mean, he was concerned back in August. So I was wondering, like, maybe he sold his position when the market went down in September for a bit, and just take the profits then. I mean, he would have still made, what, 300% off that? So still a killing from there. So, yeah. But I guess going off markets in general, there are some foreign affairs issues to talk about. We can, I guess, start off with the UK. You know how they've kind of been battered, like we said before, but then yesterday the GBP and the USD, they jumped to more than 2 years high, ahead of like the data divulge that was coming out next week, highlighting where the UK sees their projections for vaccinating the entire country, along with what the reproduction levels for the coronavirus are. And what data is showing right now is that they're way ahead of their vaccination targets, even ahead of what US is predicting. And their reproduction levels for at least the coronavirus look to be slipping below 1. And this hasn't happened since last July itself. And with, like, I guess the decreasing infection rates and the lockdown for like the past month, could you see the UK recovering that quick from this economic drought that they've had?
Yeah, if you look at the reports, they're having the worst, economic drought since the Black Plague. I think I said this last night. So it would be amazing for them to recover like the US did in the fourth quarter, from this level of damage to their economy. I think it's going to take maybe a year or two for them to at least get back to pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to
Um,
see that.
right. Yeah, I mean they're in the center of the world, right? Travel center when it comes to, U.S. to Asia travel and things like that. So, um, they got affected pretty hard in the beginning. So they still have a long way to go. It's mostly so. The good news is, yeah, they're ahead of their vaccination targets.
Hmm.
So that's the positive news from this.
Yeah. And I guess going on
Uh,
to, I guess we're talking about the coronavirus, so we might as well speak on to China, who
right,
recently refused to provide the World Health Organization with the adequate early COVID-19 data.
right.
So they really can't predict where it could have truly originated because I believe I saw a report that said before that first confirmed case got out to the public, there were about 100 similar cases within Wuhan and the surrounding area itself with
Hmm.
similar symptoms to coronavirus. So it may have even started all the way back in October and maybe even November area.
Yeah, they're hindering, the WHO's efforts to uh, have a proper investigation into the cause of COVID. And so I think so far WHO said that COVID did come from an animal. Um, but other than that, who's saying that China's not providing us with this data, that data. So yeah, I mean this is just classic China. So
Yeah, and
yep,
I guess friction more between the China and the UK as I think China ordered the BBC off their airways within China after, I guess,
yeah, that's right.
retaliation for it. So, yeah, China is definitely going place. And I guess, I don't know if you heard this, but Jack Ma was, I think, seen playing golf recently. Um,
Oh, okay.
so he was publicly seen. I think someone might have probably just captured a photo of him. So
Okay.
there's that as well.
Yeah, the whole the BBC thing taking it off, that was just because the UK took off, Beijing's primary news
Hmm.
channel. So the same thing happened here. I mean, when I think like China and like some U.S. embassy, they had some friction and they had some problems and they just retaliated. So a lot of these countries are, whatever they have, they're starting to have friction with China,
Yeah.
our allies.
Yeah.
In other countries, you have Israel. First of all, they're increasingly ahead of their schedule to vaccinate the whole population. They're almost more than 50% vaccinated their entire population. They're still having some problems with, the Palestinians getting vaccinated. People are saying that they're not getting their vaccinations and things like that. So, but Israel has its election coming up in their general election. I think it's next month.
Hmm.
And yeah, so Benjamin Netanyahu, he's trying to gain power again. This time he's counting on the Arab votes, which makes up 20% population of Israel. And it's kind of ironic because this guy has been a vocal pro, kind of not Zionist in particular, but he's been kind of pro Israel and things like that, pro like Jewish people. So
Yeah.
he's going back to like Arab votes and he's counting on them. Um,
I mean,
but
shocking.
his Likud party's leading in the polls. So we'll have to see if he what happens there in the election.
I mean,
That
that's just based on it's mainly based on the demographics, the reason that they're winning right now, because the Palestinians are really like they're just fucked, to say it the least. Like, I think historically they are in a worse situation in terms of economically, financially, and knowledge-wise than the Jews themselves. So, and
right.
that's kind of how it shifted in the past 20 years alone. And it is like I guess a debate for another time on how that entire land and area has turned out in the past, what is it, 100 years at this
Yeah.
rate? So
It's kind of like, so they're all, most of them are in the West Bank area of Israel, right?
yeah.
Um, and it's under like Israel military occupation, and there's always friction between them and Israel. And what's the current thing that's happening is, are they getting COVID vaccine like citizens of Israel? and that's the only reports saying they're not. Some people are saying they are, but there's still some there's some friction between them and Israel, and going to Iran, they are now they're pursuing nuclear weapons. I mean, we've heard this for decades, but reports are saying that they're starting to produce uranium metal, which will get them closer to a nuclear warhead.
Yeah, and speaking of uranium, just as a whole, that's also starting to go on the rise as well. Just the price of it.
So I was looking at some uranium producer stocks. There's one called BXT. I think it's actually here in Virginia. It's near Leesburg.
Oh.
Their headquarters. Yeah. They're a uranium producer. But yeah, I think nuclear energy as an alternative is getting some traction right now.
But yeah, they've been. I remember just reading reports on Reddit before Wall Street Bets kind of popped off, as well as Wall Street Journal, that uranium just as a whole, that's been strongly demanded in the past 3 months, which I thought was kind of a surprise. But yeah, seeing Iran just starting to produce it, what is it? Knowing Iran, they've probably been producing it since probably 2018 at this rate. But
right. I think they want Biden to remove the sanctions that Trump imposed on them. So I think Biden has said that the sanctions are actually going to remain. So he's basically going to continue what Trump did with Iran's with policy regarding to Iran. I don't think they'll make any improvements on the Iran deal. I think there's just so much that happened under Trump with Iran, like killing Soleimani and like their aggression with economic sanctions, even during like COVID. Like that's something I that's just something I'm like, why would you impose economic sanctions during COVID on Iran? They're having trouble with like healthcare and like food. So Trump was very aggressive on Iran, and it seems like Biden is going to continue the same thing.
I mean, Trump was never really a fan of the Middle East. I mean, he did it within his first few days of presidency, where with the travel ban and all that. So it wasn't really much of a surprise to see that.
He was in good terms with Saudi Arabia, with like MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, with the weapons deals and like F-35 deals and all that things. But regarding like, yeah, of course the travel ban that was on countries that had like a lot of terrorist concentration. So ISIS like was occupying some territories and things like that. That's what he imposed travel ban on. But Iran, he was very aggressive on Iran, and also that's also because of Saudi Arabia and Iran has some tensions as well. They're kind of going through a cold war right now, and they're having like proxy wars in Syria and Yemen. So the U.S. is on Saudi's side, obviously. They've been on for decades, so Biden seems to be doing the same thing. I mean, it's not surprising, but he's not planning to negotiate or re-enter the nuclear deal. And that's the whole problem, actually. Like with the nuclear deal, Trump's the one who got out of it. Obama's the one who made it, right? And it was actually going pretty well. Iran wasn't going over their limit for uranium enrichment, but Trump's the one who got out, and now Iran's making more moves regarding to nuclear weapons and things like that. So we'll have to see this under Biden's administration, what he will do.
I guess it's kind of straying off on that. Has anyone heard any news from Lebanon recently? Ever since that,
other than the explosion, I haven't read anything.
Yeah, and the government, everyone resigning from the government official postings. But other than that,
that explosion was just a failure, right? Yeah. That's why they all resigned.
Yeah, but it's like I haven't heard anything from them. No allies. I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of impossible with the way things are right now. But I mean, still, I would have expected some sort of news coming out of there within the recent months. Probably with Biden coming in, like I assumed that he would start to help them out, but I don't know. Just talking about Iran just made me think of the Middle East in general, and just Lebanon, just sitting all alone.
they've been given some aid from other countries. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's from the U.S.
I don't know. I don't think it's
but
enough though. I mean, they need tons
no,
of help.
they're going through a big economic crisis right now.
Yeah,
It's on the brink of collapse actually.
it's worse than
So
Greece at this rate.
yeah,
So
they possibly could go through a regime change. To be honest, there could be like the Arab Springs, and it could possibly happen in Lebanon in the coming years.
hmm
There could be a big revolution.
And I
So
don't think we
uh,
ever talked about is it Myanmar that got taken over by the army? Was that
yeah, yeah. Yep. They recently went under a military coup.
yeah.
And for 1 year, the country is going to be in a state of emergency,
hmm
and they've detained like the royalty. I think like the prince and like some other members of royalty. So yeah, they're currently under military occupation,
Yeah. So
and there's protests and things
the
like that
chiefs
going on.
themselves are like ordering, I think, arrestments of all the basically anyone who's against them right now. It's basically gone back to dictatorship.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it was kind of shocking to see that. I don't think anyone saw a coup just happening there at any moment. So, but I guess
Yeah, it was out of the blue.
yeah, it was kind of
Yeah.
in the perfect time. But I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't really know whose side I'm on because I'm gonna pronounce her name wrong. But Aung San Suu Kyi, the one who's kind of the leader of the Democratic Party there. I mean, she's done some shady stuff in the past 4 years alone. It's kind of like, the way U.S. runs. It's kind of private, the shady stuff she's done, and in public, she's like seen as this royalty figure. While the general, I mean, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what the world thinks. He has an army, he has the military weapons, and all that. So
Yeah. There was like this news channel where this host was, reporting news, and then they didn't know that there's just military trucks like driving past them, and they didn't even know like a military coup was happening. So I found that very funny. Like they were just reporting on some random news, and then you see all these like military trucks going to the Capitol. So now they don't even realize that a coup's happening.
could you imagine that? Just like TMZ just reporting next to the Washington Capitol. Well, it's like a
Yeah.
bunch of Republicans just storm the Capitol and just take over.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to our stock market news, this week there was an IPO, Bumble, which is kind of like it's a dating app like Tinder. It made the founder a billionaire. And yeah,
Wow.
it jumped like 64% when it came to the market.
Billionaire?
I personally won't buy in.
No, I mean it's a dating app. How much money can they make?
Yeah.
Like I
I'm
know
not gonna buy in.
I know people are desperate out there. I don't think that many people would be pretty desperate out there.
IPOs have made a lot of people billionaires. When it comes to like Airbnb and DoorDash, like the founders, they become instant billionaires like overnight.
Yeah.
So yeah, the IPO frenzy is like crazy. Like,
And especially
every
if
IPO is jumping up.
especially if you're in a SPAC as well.
Mhm.
Like, man. But yeah, I guess going off on that, I know Palantir's reporting earnings on Monday morning.
Tuesday, Monday is off. Remember,
Monday's off, yeah. Tuesday morning.
right.
So
Yeah, Tuesday it's gonna be different. They're gonna announce I think 8:30 before market, like around 8 o'clock. So I'm very interested in what they'll report. So the analyst predictions are that they'll report a positive EPS for the quarter. That's gonna be huge. So when Amazon released their first quarter with profitability, I think they went up like 20. Since then, they've gone up 25,000%. When Tesla released their profitability, they've gone up. You know how they've gone up.
yeah.
So Palantir, if they are on a track to profitability, that would be great. That's one of my top holdings in my portfolio, so that's what I'm looking out for.
Yeah, it's not one of my top holdings, but it's there.
Right.
Yeah, other than that, I think I will start looking at more lithium ion companies. So Starpeak Energy Transition, ticker symbol STPK is one of them.
Okay.
They came in through a SPAC, but looking at their like projections and their financials and the way the EV market as a whole is running, I think Tesla might start to have to outsource some of their products that they're doing right now. So
Okay.
battery is one of the main key components of their cars, and I think.
So
Oh no, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna interrupt with so the chip shortage, right? Would it be a great idea to invest in like chip companies, chip producers? The only thing I know about is like Taiwanese
Yeah, TSM.
semiconductors,
Yeah.
and Nvidia could be also a play.
I mean, to
But
be fair, every time I said, "Oh, I'm gonna wait till semiconductors takes a fall," it's just gone straight up. So,
yeah,
I mean, at this rate, I'm guessing at any point it's a good idea to buy semiconductors because it doesn't seem like they're going to be going away, except maybe Intel, but Intel's doing
yeah. You can
whatever.
also get an ETF, maybe like a SPDR ETF on
Yeah,
semiconductors as
so
well.
the
So
semiconductors ETF is, I think, SMH. So that's like I think the main one that's out there right now.
okay, okay,
But yeah, it's around $200 per share. But the difference is it's a lot more volatile than like the Nasdaq will be because anytime it's like if you think about it, it's probably like maybe 2.5 times the beta of Nasdaq.
oh wow,
So because a huge portion of the Nasdaq itself is semiconductors, or like a good portion of it. So anytime semiconductors rise a lot, Nasdaq just goes right behind it.
okay,
So that's why this week, if you would have seen like S&P, Dow Jones didn't really perform as great, but the Nasdaq did pretty good. I think up to 2.5%, and that's because semiconductors were itself up like 8%.
right. Yeah, Nvidia had a great week actually
Yeah.
this past week. So
Yeah, so semiconductors, lithium ion, uranium, all those don't seem to be going away for now. They look to be kind of like the next oil in terms of where companies might start to invest in the future, other than crypto,
right.
of course. But yeah, I guess
Yeah.
lastly, VIX, big news on the VIX. The VIX has reached below 20 bucks for the first
great news.
time since I think February of last year. So yeah, that's huge news. Historically, when the VIX has gone below, like the first days after the VIX has gone below $20, the S&P has had tremendous returns over the next 6 months.
That's great news, bro.
Yeah. After those 6 months, I mean, there were 2 crashes after that. So we don't need to worry about that. But for the next 6 months, according to historical data, money should be rolling in.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, the market seems like it's gonna hit 4,000. At least the S&P 500 is gonna hit 4,000 really soon.
Probably next
so
week
that'll
at this
be
rate.
yeah, that'll be insane. So yeah, I mean, we'll probably end like the year. I mean, I think JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, they're predicting the S&P 500 will hit like 4,500 for this year. That seems very likely, to be honest. At this rate, and with like inflation and all the spending and government issuing, unemployment benefits and stimulus checks.
Yeah.
Investors are taking notice, and there's just an insane amount of money flowing in. So inflation's always good for the stock market. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have hyperinflation. But yeah, I think that
we'll
does it. Or did you have something else to say?
No, that's it. I think we're good to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that does it for us this week on the Greenback Voyage podcast. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube to subscribe and hit that like button. And if you're watching on Spotify, make sure to share and follow us. And we will see you guys next week.
That's right. And stay safe, guys. See you guys next week.